For those of you who don't know who JBS is, we're this small mom and pop meat packer out of Brazil that processes about 100,000 head of cattle every day, about 70,000 hogs, about 13 to 14 million birds, and about 50 to 60,000 sheep and lamb. We're also the largest cattle feeder in the world. We're also the largest global leather processor as an outgrowth of that. So when you think of big badass agriculture, all right, I'm it. Okay? We're also recognized as the second largest global food company in terms of sales. We would have cleared over 50 billion in sales last year. So sustainability. You've heard a lot about it today. It's this new buzzword. The big question, though, always is, what the hell does it mean? Right? It means something different for whoever's talking about it. And you heard some companies and some other people talk about it earlier today, and I would argue some were talking about sustainability, others were talking about sustainable sourcing, right? But we rarely talk about sustainability in the truly holistic manner that the science of sustainability demands. We get confused between what we're trying to communicate to consumers and the actual science of sustainability. There is a science to sustainability. You don't get to make up what it means something, right? But here's our challenge. It's the consumer's view of what sustainability means. This is Norman Rockwell's 1948 The County Agent. And I'll just point out a few things. You've got the little white girl with the curly hair and the 4-H folder under her arm. She's got her jeans pegged like I used to do in high school. You've got the agent with the little brown and white calf there. Got free-range chicken running around spreading avian influenza, getting salmonella. Cats and dogs are living together in harmony. Red and white barn. There's no black people. There's no Hispanics, right? It's this idyllic notion of old school agriculture. You've got American Gothic, Grant Wood's famous painting, with the farmer's wife who may not make it to see tomorrow. You have these rolling hills, these red and white barns, the black and white cattle, free-ranging, horse-drawn carriages. And then you have these niche programs, like organic or like grass-fed, right? I like grass-fed until about the third time I've had it. But if people like it, that's fine, right? But people are associating niche programs with sustainability, right? And sustainability has nothing to do with a particular system. It's system independent, okay? I love this one. We are sustainable. Why? They're 100% grass-fed, on pasture always, no pesticides, no irrigation, family farm raised, never confined, no hormones, pause breath, organic practices, no antibiotics, no fertilizer, and never fed corn. Now, it sounds like a tasty steak, nothing wrong with it, but this is how they're defining sustainability in all these niche categories. And it's confusing the heck out of consumers. And I apologize for the bluntness of this, but I threw a party, but the cattlemen couldn't come. Why? Because beef causes impotence. I didn't make this up. This is out there, right? This is from our friends at PETA, telling you to go vegan. And then you can't be a meat-eating environmentalist. Every farmer or rancher I've ever met in my life is an environmentalist. And then taking meat off your plate can cut your carbon footprint in half, but then who would want that plate, right? So if we don't define it, here's some of our elitists that will. They're showing Food Inc. in American schools now with no counterpoint. Chris Leonard, who I just got off the phone with this morning, he's a great advocate for our industry. The meat racket was an expose about conventional agriculture, big agriculture, primarily aimed at Tyson, which didn't bother me, but still attacking corporate agriculture. My people are up to it as well. You have the food babe, right? She's this gal who likes to look at ingredient labels, and if she can't pronounce the multi-syllabic word there, then she says it should be banned from the food supply. She's a true scientist. And then we have Jamie Oliver, right? He's got that pretty British accent. He basically came out and said we shouldn't be using this LFTB because they use ammonia in the process, right? And we eliminated it from our food supply. right? It's coming back now, but we eliminated it. Why? Under the guise of sustainability, right? But this is a technology that allowed me in my beef packing plant to do more with less. To do more with less. And a lot of these niche programs I showed you do less with more. It's not to say that they're unsustainable on their face, but we're having a very backwards conversation, right? How many more cattle, how much more water, how much more fertilizer, how many more emissions do we have to put into the environment by removing this technology from our food supply? It was an unsustainable act, right? But consumer activism made us do it. Perspective matters, right? Perspective matters. When you look at sustainability, the lens by which you view it often determines the definition. If you're a social NGO, it's all about slave labor, it's all about fair wages, it's all about employment, right? If you're an environmentalist, it's all about emissions, carbon footprint, what we're doing to waterways and streams. If, God forbid, and you're in a business, you're worried about your long-term viability, your profitability as a business enterprise. But all of those things encompass sustainability. So perspective matters. So you have to understand who you're talking to. I like Frank's quote, by the way. Not saying I live by it, I just say I liked it. One of the challenges is we have this huge modern disconnect from agriculture, okay? Less than 1% of our population in the United States is involved in farming, right? So most Americans, their interaction with agriculture is in a grocery store. For all they know, it came from the back parking lot, right? So the old county mouse, city mouse paradigm is really challenging today, okay? No one gets off of work and goes and buys a steer and knocks the head off in the backyard, right? People are not connected with modern agriculture. So it makes us extremely vulnerable, particularly when we don't talk about what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. And it's not just telling people our story. I hear this all the time. We just have to tell our story. Like it's going to wash over these people, and they'll just get it, and then they'll say, okay, I'm with you now, right? That's false. It's about having a dialogue. It's about having a dialogue with some pretty crazy people sometimes, right? But we have to engage in a dialogue so that they understand some of the trade-offs. And then we have activist pressure, right? We have these videos. Another one just came out today, hitting the pork industry. This handsome devil was responsible for a lot of this, right? With his BT cotton shirt. And HSUS brags about this, right? We're inside of corporate boardrooms across the country helping major food retailers implement policies to eliminate gestation crates from their supply chains, right? And I had a meeting with some very powerful retailers just not too long ago. And they said, Cameron, we have made all these claims that we're going to remove this from our supply chain by 2022. Congratulations. So how do we get there? I really have no idea. Did you think about that in 2012? No. People are making claims to get activists out of their boardroom as risk mitigation. And they often do it under the guise of sustainability. They make completely unsustainable decisions, and then they turn to the rest of us, bottom feeders in the supply chain that are just providing product, and say you need to do the following things by the following date in order to have the pleasure of continuing to do business with me, right? And then you've got the internet. Abraham Lincoln had great foresight. He's a brilliant man. But we've seen in some of the other discussions about how pseudoscience is put out on the internet and people lap it up. They love it, right? And then they do robocalls, they get into boardrooms, they tell people these things, and all of a sudden, LFTB is gone. Gestation stalls are gone, right? We are hurting our industry by listening to people who do not ever intend to consume our products. Imagine that for a moment. People are going into boardrooms who do not desire, do not want to eat the products that they're telling you how you should grow and raise them. Okay? I happen to believe in God. If you don't, that's fine. You're just going to hell. But I happen to believe in God. Right? I would not go to an atheist and ask him for counsel on how to pray. All right? But this is what we're doing. We're letting these activists tell us what to do about products they don't even want to consume. So the consumer is very confused in my view. It's a protect me from what I want kind of situation. I want local and natural because it's better for the environment. Please show me the study that proves that. And it's better for my health. They just asked the head of the USDA organic program, are these products safer? And he ducked for cover, ran for the hills, didn't provide an answer. Because there's no proof that it's safer, right? But they don't want food from big badass companies like me, because I'm bad for their health. I'm bad for the environment. We have to always remember modern agriculture, what you men and women do in this room and what you students hope to do in the future. We have created the most modern, the most efficient, the safest, and yes, the most globally dispersed agricultural system in the history of mankind. It's why the population is going to explode to 9.5 billion, maybe 10 billion people by 2050, and we'll be able to meet the challenge. It's not because of the Norman Rockwell painting, it's because of what we're doing today. We never take credit for it, we never brag about it. Farmers don't want to be bothered with microphones and media at their operations. We just do our work, we go about doing what we do, right? But what we do is amazing, it is awesome. We should be proud of it. Ben Bernanke, both humans' capacity to innovate and the incentives to innovate are greater today than in any other time in history. No question about it. The question is, are we going to be able to utilize these new technological tools and innovation to meet this growing demand? Will the consumer let us, right? And if we keep listening to rich white Europeans and Americans, the answer will be no, right? Because they are making choices to remove technology, to remove innovation from their food supply. Why? Because they can afford it, right? This is how it always feels. I am not Jesus on this picture. Good guys, bad guys, right? This is how the critics often frame this debate. There's actually a good food movement. What in God's creation does that mean? A good food movement, right? It's all local. Okay, as far as I know from my animal science background, most food comes from the ground, so it's all local. It's just globally dispersed, right? And that's a good thing, because I live in Colorado, and I like bananas. And they don't grow bananas in Colorado, right? So this is the frame of the debate. It's a poor place to have a conversation. I know I pick on my organic and my natural and my grass-fed and my bottle-fed milk friends, but they're all part of agriculture, right? We have to stop having the bickering and the infighting amongst ourselves as an industry and celebrate all of agriculture in its various forms. And if people are crazy enough to pay a premium for something, God bless them, let's give them some of it, right? But let's not try to equate a niche system as what all of agriculture should become. Because if we do that, there's going to be a lot of people on the planet Earth, frankly, that are going to die. And a lot of them are going to look more like me than you in this room. We're going to be brown and yellow, okay? I believe it's immoral to promote systems that do less with more as the panacea. I believe it's immoral, okay? So we have what I like to call the concerns of the full stomach, these wealthy people, right? So 44%, they say, of Americans are food involved. This is a study from Ketchum. And 22% of them are evangelists. That's the little ants. They know what's good for you. They know what's best for you. If you don't believe them, just ask them. They'll tell you. You should be eating this way. You should only have these types of choices. 48% of them are young, under 35. I remember when I was under 35, I had hair and I looked really good. 46% of them are parents. 62% of them are female. And their income is well above average. So we're increasingly chasing these wealthy consumers and modifying our production system to mollify their concerns, both real and imagined. All right? I mean, what more needs to be said? And so what has been the commercial response? It's been sober, rational. McDonald's has said that they're going to start sourcing verified sustainable beef. And I love McDonald's. They sell a lot of meat. I think they're responsible for maybe 1% of all beef. I mean, that's a huge number, right? So we want McDonald's to be successful. And I was in Oak Brook when they made this announcement that they're going to start sourcing verified sustainable beef. And I asked them, well, what are you sourcing today? They said, no, Cameron, we believe that the beef that we're sourcing is sustainable. We just want to verify it. Well, that's fine. I think we should encourage that and help them along this journey, right? But again, they've been fairly collaborative. Others have not been as collaborative. I don't mean to imply that by showing the Walmart slide. Maybe I do. I don't know. They've announced a Standards of Excellence program where they're going to touch at least 50% of the cattle industry by close of 2016. That's of their own supply. And they have a beef pilot program where they're going to include environmental criteria as part of their sourcing policies for beef. So you're seeing more and more corporations viewing sustainability from a sourcing avenue. Have you seen McDonald's or Walmart in the news within the last 6 months about wages, about how their employees are treated? These are sustainability issues as well. Right? So for you here representing large multinational corporations who are creating sustainability policies, when you're going to go out, certify, verify, check farms, do all these things, sustainable sourcing is part of your journey. It is not the sustainability journey, though. That's not all of it, right? How you treat those members of your team, what you do in these local communities, your philanthropic impact, your corporate social responsibility, these are all part of sustainability too. And when we ignore those issues, we no longer talk about sustainability. Now we're talking about an environmental program. There's nothing wrong with environmental programs, right? But to equate sustainability to environmental, you're no longer talking about sustainability. And then my friends in the U.S. government, God bless them, and all that they stand for. They put out an advisory committee put out a recommendation to the dietary guidelines that basically excludes lean meat, although they did put in a footnote and said, it's okay, we just don't like it all that much. But moderate alcohol consumption is the way to go. Right? And this is a huge challenge because these activists, these people who believe passionately about it, I mean, I have to beg you all to say good afternoon, right? These people are invading the government. They're doing all this crazy stuff, putting more and more pressure on livestock and protein meat industries, right? Because they have an agenda. They believe they know what's right. They believe they know what's right for you, and they'd like to enforce it on the rest of us, right? This is a huge challenge. So what's the reality? We've got some 2050 global trends. I'm sure everyone has said this to you. What's the main point? 3 billion in middle class growth by 2050. What's the population of China today? Anybody know? 1.5 billion. So 2 Chinas are coming. 2 Chinas are coming. All right? In the middle class. Why does that matter? When you take someone from poverty to low income, or from low income to the middle class, what happens? You go out and buy a new Cadillac. Admittedly, it's what some of the brothers do. But what most people do is they improve their diet. Okay? Protein, dairy, eggs, meat. So the reality is that you have this huge wall of demand coming. No matter what we do, it's coming. Right? So we can put our heads in the sand and try for meatless Mondays and say we should all go vegan. I travel all around the world. I have never once come back from overseas and said, I haven't had a delicious cup of lentil soup in like 8 days. I can't wait to get to Whole Foods so I can crush some beans and make lentil soup. I've wanted a sirloin, though. I've wanted a ribeye. I've wanted a pork chop, right? There is a love affair with the products that we produce, okay? And people just want to feel good. They want to have that social license to continue to consume products they already love. And per capita consumption is not going to go up, particularly in the U.S. and Europe, where all these crazy concerns come from. There's just going to be more people, right? And so we have to feed them. But we do have an environmental challenge because currently BASF states that we're using about 1.5 planets of resources. We're going to need 70% more food. And to do that at our current trajectory, that would take 3 planets. And we don't have 3 planets, right? No one's cultivating the moon. Climate change, where we grow some of these crops globally, maybe we shouldn't be growing them anymore, right? What are going to be the changes in where we produce the agricultural goods that we're producing? And then we consume a lot of water, a lot of water. I do a lot of it in my plants for food safety, all right? This may be the true great challenge of our time. How do we find enough water? Ask any Californian or Texan, right? It's reality. It's a huge challenge. So how do we meet the challenge? One suggestion. I have a running list that I've been working on. If you have any recommendations, let me know. I'll add it. I think it's important, though, that we kind of understand the real story when it comes to sustainability versus the perception out there. If you look at beef, they've reduced across all these areas. We did a LCA in partnership with NCBA. A bunch of packers participated, drug dealers, environmentalists, everyone, all committed data, provided data. And we showed all these trends from 2005 to 2011 of how we're reducing our environmental impact, right? So big, nasty ag like me is actually doing some great things in the plants, on the farm, with cattle genetics, with water consumption, greenhouse gas emissions. We're doing all these great things, right? But everyone says that we're unsustainable. If you look at pork, over the last 50 years, they put out a study. They're using 78% less land, 41% less water, and 35% smaller carbon footprint, right? Over 50 years, you would expect that. We're innovators in agriculture, right? We always try to do more with less. We always try to be more efficient. This is not a shock to you. But in 1959, it took 8 pigs to produce 1,000 pounds of pork, right? Today, it takes just 5. That's impressive. That's sustainability. That's doing more with less. And the average American farmer today feeds about 155 people worldwide. In 1960, that was less than 26 people, okay? So we're certainly on this arc of continuous improvement. But it's important when we discuss sustainability that we understand what we're talking about, because too many people equate it with environmental. And environmental is very important. We've seen the challenge. But sustainability is a balanced discipline that deals with social, economic, and environmental. And it's the balance between all 3. I can't invest $30 million into a wastewater treatment plant at my pork plant in Iowa and put it out of business, right? The next day I'll have 2,000 team members looking for a job. Livestock producers won't have anywhere to go to process their hogs. It would be bad, right? So it's a balance. Yes, environmental is important, but so is social, so is economic, so is the livelihood of rural economies all across the United States. So let's define it very simply as we go forward, responsibly meeting the needs of the present while improving the ability of future generations to responsibly meet their own needs. If you consider that definition, if you view it through that lens, now ask yourself some of the corporate decisions that have been made recently, some of the announcements, GMO-free. View it through this lens. See, does it pass the sustainability test, right? And it's always about continuous improvement, doing better today than I did yesterday so I can improve for tomorrow. I'm sure you've heard it today. It's a journey, it's not a destination, right? You don't get to proclaim yourself sustainable on Tuesday and say, get the hell off my ranch, don't come back, I'm good. It's always about improvement, always about continuous improvement, doing better than you did. And when you limit the focus just to say sustainable sourcing, you miss all these opportunities. In our social pillar, we have animal welfare, worker safety, human rights, property rights, beef safety, beef quality, consumer trust. In the economic pillar, yes, you have profitability, I'm sorry. You have shareholder return, capital investment, food affordability, your license to operate. And then we have the traditional environmental pillar where most people equate sustainability. This holistic approach to sustainability forces your detractors to get out of their issue du jour and understand what are the actual trade-offs if I eliminate gestation stalls from the U.S. pork industry. What does that mean for animal welfare? What does that mean for societal benefits? It's not just a reaction to the latest consumer whim. We have to think about sustainability from a balanced approach to understand what these actual trade-offs are. And it's very difficult to communicate this to consumers. So I'm not saying you should show this slide to a consumer. I mean, their eyes will roll back and they'll faint. It's too much, right? How you pivot and communicate that to consumers is a different discussion altogether. But as an industry, of those of us who have a stake in the future of this industry and how we're going to feed the world, we have to talk about sustainability realistically and honestly and forthrightly, particularly with our retail partners and those who are dealing with consumers. And then arm them with the messaging they need to translate it to sell product. JBS did a materiality analysis. That means you just look at everything in your business. What's material to its long-term success? What are the threats? What are the hot spots? Number one for us was animal welfare. Why do you think that is? Is it because we're just abusing the life out of these animals? Or is it because there's activists at every doorstep, right? The number one issue. If you look at the x-axis, this is the relevance of the issues from my company's perspective. If you look at the Y, this is from outside stakeholders' perspectives. That's NGOs. Everyone knows what an NGO is, quasi-terrorist organization. Some of them are really good. Government, key customers, key suppliers, all those external stakeholders ranked all of these issues based on what they thought was material to our business, and then we did it internally as well. And if you look to the right, is that right? To the right of that gray box, you'll kind of see what bubbled to the top from a company perspective, which doesn't surprise me. We're a pretty focused company. We're in a little bit of denial about all the challenges that are out there, but very focused on 4 or 5 issues. If you look at the top, look at from the gray box up, this is what our external stakeholders thought was important. Everything was important to them, right? And this was a sustainability study, okay? So it wasn't just environmental, it was technology and agriculture, it was transparency, business ethics, all these issues are viewed as important. If you look at the Global Reporting Initiative categories, look at environmental. A lot of us companies have to report to these people, tell them everything that we're doing. We've given them a badge and a license for some reason. And if you look at the environmental category, these are all the areas that are traditionally associated with sustainability. But look at this group's social category. Labor management, relations, occupational health and safety, training and education, diversity and equal opportunity. I like that. Not a whole lot of diversity here today. Y'all should work on that. Investment. Non-discrimination. I like that. Freedom of association. Not my favorite topic. Local communities. This social pillar is critically important, and we never talk about it when we talk about sustainability. This is where we can align our values with consumers and really start to engage in that conversation, that narrative that says, here's what we do, here's how we do it, and here's why we do it, and here's how it aligns with your values as one of our customers, right? Rather than being so defensive of, yeah, I did all these audits and checks, and the animals are being treated okay, it's safe to eat, right? Be more aggressive and tell what we're doing. Align our values. So how are we here? Why are we here? We have all these global consumers. Most of them, I believe, want choice. There are some radical people who want to eliminate choice from the supply chain. And then you have retailers who are very desirous of making claims around sustainability. Some of it's risk mitigation. Some of it is part of the corporate culture when they want to make the world a better place through what they do, right? But they're dealing, particularly in beef, they're dealing with folks like me, right? We're the good guys in this story, in case you haven't picked that up. And we're kind of in the middle, right? So we're a company that has to use a lot of water. We have huge food safety responsibilities, huge workforce responsibilities. We use technology. We're low-margin operators. And we sit in the middle between a retailer and our producer-supplier partners, right? And most of the sustainability demands flow right through me and right to these guys, right? I don't have a lot of people saying I need to see your wastewater plant. They want to make sure I haven't done a fish kill lately, but there's not a whole lot of interest in what I'm doing in the plant. It's all on the farm, all on the ranch. Do they have a nutrient management plan? Do they have a manure management plan? What are they doing on greenhouse gas emissions? There's 750,000 cow-calf producers. I don't know. You tell me what they're doing, right? So the producer is under tremendous pressure, right? And they're generally the best message vehicle for a lot of these things, right? Everyone loves to throw the cowboy boots and the cowboy hat and the sizzling steak on a commercial, right? They're generally not coming, hey, Cameron, can we film some of these heads getting knocked off in your plant? We want to run a commercial. Not a lot of promotion campaigns on killing cattle. So these guys are used and kind of abused, frankly, on some of this sustainability stuff. So they feel under pressure. They have to go through all these verifications, these audits, these checks to verify, prove what they're doing, to prove that they're sustainable. And then we have our NGOs, our activists. This Panda Bear is from the World Wildlife. Is it Fun Federation? I get it mixed up with the old WWF. And they're a social NGO, all right? They're very concerned about the environment. They're really good-meaning people. I know a lot of these folks. But their challenge is they can't influence 7 billion global consumers, because no matter what these consumers tell you, they might directionally care about a lot of this stuff, but they ain't willing to pay more for it when it comes down to brass tacks, okay? Unless they're wealthy, right? So these NGOs have this huge struggle. HSUS has this huge struggle. I can't influence 7 billion consumers. I certainly can't influence 750,000 cow-calf producers in the United States, because if I show up at the ranch with my questionnaire, they're going to meet me at the gate with a shotgun, okay? So I can't influence there. So what do? I'm going to leverage you big boys in the middle, okay? I'm going to go to your boardroom. I'm going to protest. I had some folks in the Netherlands show up at a supermarket dressed as black and white cows. They had ketchup on the teats, said JBS is abusing cattle. And then the European retailer says, I don't know what's going on, but you fix it, or we're not going to sell your beef in our stores. Fantastic partnership, right? But they're smart. They know what they're doing. They're going in these corporate boardrooms. They're making people feel very nervous. One major corporation just got a series of robocalls about a month ago to their board. And all of a sudden I get a call and they're going to change animal welfare, antibiotics, they're going to do all these policy changes. So they got a series of robocalls. It could impact share price, right? They have to protect their brand. They're selling a brand. They have to protect it. And oftentimes, us in this room, we don't give them the tools to protect themselves, okay? So the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, a little bit of false advertising. I am no longer the president as of 2 weeks ago. Forrest Roberts, the CEO of NCBA, is the new president, and he'll do a fantastic job. But we've chosen a roundtable approach. That's why I have a round feed bunk there. But I was president for the last 2.5 years, and I can tell you, most days, it felt like that. And it felt like that with empty frickin' bowls. The point of a roundtable is that you have a whole lot of knights and you've got no head. Everybody has equal standing. I don't care if you're a little cow-calf guy and you've got 2 mama cows, or you're a big global multinational packer like me. We all have an equal voice at the table discussing these challenges. This is the beauty of a roundtable concept. But the roundtable concept has been, I believe, misused by some. So let's walk through very quickly. The NGOs originally thought that if I can convince large U.S. and European multinationals to adopt our roundtable certification, seal, standard, logo, whatever you want to call it, then this will transform the supply chain, right? This will help poor farmers. It'll give them more leverage. It'll improve the environment. It'll improve social justice. It will do all these things if we can just convince these large multinationals to adopt our standard, okay? But their standards are generally on farm, and they're generally a lot of KPIs, a lot, okay? So if you go to a poor cocoa farmer and you show up with a list of 80 KPIs, right, and he doesn't know how he's going to buy his little baby girl that school uniform, think he's going to take time to fill out 80 KPIs, right? And so you've got this Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil, the Better Cotton Initiative, Roundtable for Responsible Soy, Bansucro for sugarcane, and ours, the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, right? The difference from ours and the rest of these is that we don't have a global standard. Why? Because you can raise beef anywhere on God's planet, except for maybe Antarctica. Probably could raise them there too. So it'd be very difficult to try to equate all these varying production systems and come up with one sustainability standard that was relevant to all that treated producers fairly. So we said we're not going to do that. We'll define what sustainability means for us, and then locally and regionally you interpret it in a manner that allows you to prioritize the challenges for your production system and truly arrive at some sustainable beef. Because if you create a system of compliance, you know what you'll get? You'll get compliant actors. But you won't spur innovation. You won't unleash entrepreneurial spirit. This is the problem with a lot of these certifications. They're box checkers, okay? And what have they resulted in? Great marketing opportunities. Great marketing opportunities. But have we lost focus on our ultimate goal? If our goal is to create a standard, a logo, or a seal, we can do that. We can do that overnight. We don't need producer cooperation. But is that going to move the needle to the real challenge of trying to feed the world, using more with less, being more efficient, making the planet a better place than we found it, leaving it in better shape for future generations? Does a seal do that? Right? You saw some of these slides earlier. I love putting hipsters on slides because I'm just fascinated with them. They're just so hairy and well-dressed. But when we talk about sustainability, our goal should not be to create a competitive niche. We have enough competitive niches, right? I do not want to go into my meat case and see beautiful, sustainable beef here and then kind of shit beef here. That makes no sense. All beef should be viewed as sustainable. When you go into a grocery store, you all are familiar with Tyson Foods, I assume. If you were to go into a grocery store and for some misguided reason buy a Tyson product, you would not do so because you thought it was safer than mine, right? You would go into a grocery store and you would say, if it's in the grocery store, it must be safe. It must have passed USDA inspection. It must have passed all these bells and whistles to be safe. So I think all the food is there and safe, and now I'm going to make choices based on brand, based on quality, based on taste, based on fancy packaging, based on cost, which is what everyone actually does, right? But not because you thought one product was safer than the other. This should be our goal in sustainability. It should be pre-competitive. People should go into a store and say, wow, if it's in the grocery store, I know the U.S. beef industry, the U.S. pork industry, the U.S. poultry industry is working hard on this, right? Their values align with mine. I know it's sustainable. I just happen to prefer Pilgrims chicken, which is a JBS company, over Tyson chicken. And that's fine, right? So you can still differentiate. You can still compete in the sustainability space, but it shouldn't be a proposition of sustainable versus unsustainable product, right? So here's what we've done at the Global Roundtable. I'm sorry, I know you saw this before, but this curve is kind of your continuous improvement curve, right? And then when you kind of have a sustainable beef baseline, and all beef should be under that baseline, all beef, right? And if it's not being produced in a sustainable manner, we need to work with people to help them arrive at that outcome, right? But all beef should be viewed as sustainable. And then when companies like mine, or Tyson, or National, or Cargo, or anyone else want to differentiate, let's differentiate from that baseline up. Does that make sense? When I ask a question, does that make sense? Yeah, okay. No, it doesn't. Why doesn't it make sense?
There may be genetic differences.
Well, of course there'll be differences. The point is that as a baseline, you'll view it all as sustainable, and then some will have more attributes than the other. If I'm doing more for worker safety, or if you prefer an Angus product or whatever the case may be, you can differentiate. But as a baseline, it's viewed as sustainable. You're doing the right things in the social, economic, and environmental pillars, okay? This is the goal. Because, and I think you saw this as well, you don't want to create this false choice for consumers where they have sustainable versus unsustainable product. The challenge is too great. We need every system out there to do more with less, whether it's organic, local, natural, whatever it may be. Everyone needs to improve if we're going to have any shot at meeting the challenge. And again, a lot of these certification programs are so onerous, all you do is reward the people who are already doing a good job. And those at the other end of the bell curve, who are worried about feeding their family as a farmer, or worried about where the next check is going to come from, or they're just a hobby farmer, they're not going to take on all these KPIs to verify, to let you audit them, to prove that they're sustainable. It's not realistic, right? We've overcomplicated this system. You saw these quotes before. They're good quotes. That's why I use them. This is very important, food waste. It does not matter what you ask the supply chain to do to improve water, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, societal concerns. If ultimately the consumer is going to throw a third of it away in their kitchen, then it doesn't matter. If you eliminated food waste from the global food chain, they estimate you'd meet about 50% of that 70% increase in food production we need by 2050, just by eliminating food waste. And food waste occurs at every step of the value chain, right? But the biggest abusers of this are consumers and those millennials that you are all lusting after. They are the worst. Go into a grocery store and look at someone under 30 and they've got this basket just full of food, everything they could ever desire, and they go home and half of it spoils. Half of that organic, local, natural, it spoils. That ain't sustainable, okay? And they waste good stuff, which is unbelievable. And this is very important, because if you look at a lot of these certification programs that large multinational companies use, and they love to put the seal on their packaging and say we sustainably sourced all the ingredients in this product, but what has it achieved? This is where we lose sight of the challenge. We're not putting people first. We're not thinking about the futures of farmers, of ranchers, of rural economies, of rural society, of those of us who actually provide food, right? So yeah, you've got this great label with this certified product, but half of the farmers that produce this aren't even selling it as certified sustainable product. So what's the point of that? There's not even a market for it a lot of times. And so you're asking someone to take on all these increased costs, and you're not going to give them a premium. The premium model doesn't work in sustainability. But then they can't even sell it as sustainable. So it becomes a disincentive to adopt some of these key metrics that could actually help us improve and meet the global challenge. You saw this again today. What the previous presenter didn't know is that Leonardo da Vinci didn't actually say that. It just looked really good when I saw it on the internet. But it's important that we empower people to prioritize and meet the challenges that make sense for their system, okay? When you create this one-size-fits-all approach, and you say, here are the key categories that you have to do, and you have to do it this way with this prescriptive practice, you eliminate people's innovation and entrepreneurial spirit. And oftentimes, you don't address the main challenge before you. You have all this certified product, but food waste is not a priority. The livelihood of a farmer is not a priority. Getting that baby girl her school uniform so she can go to school and take that family out of poverty is not a priority. So how is any of that sustainable, right? We've lost focus of the goal. So the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, who are we? There's a lot of fancy words up there. It's important to understand who we're not. We're not a New World Order organization. We're not in Tiananmen Square, although we could be. We're not this fascist regime. This was an actual quote from a cow-calf guy, God bless him. I wish we were, 'cause I don't make enough money doing what I do. We envision a world where all aspects of the global beef value chain are environmentally sound, socially responsible, and economically viable. Will that ever happen? Probably not. But that's the aspirational goal. All beef should be sustainable. There will be varying degrees of sustainability, certainly. But as a baseline, all beef should be. We need it to be sustainable. We have a lot of fancy corporate logos and people that are a part of it. But this is the challenge of a roundtable. You've got civil society, that's their polite way of saying NGO. You've got commerce and processing, retail, producers. You know, a lot of these roundtables that I showed you don't have producers at the table. It's just large corporations and NGOs determining what producers should do with no producer input. That's folly. That's not the way to go. So we do have, we've got boots and hats at the table. They can be difficult to deal with, but you need them at the table. Because again, that's where a lot of the requests for changes go to. We view sustainability using the triple bottom line approach, right? And sustainable beef resides in that confluence of those three areas, right? It's a very difficult discipline, sustainability. It's not easy, okay? You have to be holistic. You have to balance trade-offs. It's difficult to communicate. It's difficult to understand. But we have to take it on honestly, right? You can't just be in the environmental sphere and do marketing. That's not going to help us meet the problem, meet the challenge. Because there truly is a challenge before us. Here's our timeline. You don't care about that, but here's the most important thing. Late last year, we released the first global definition for sustainable beef. We released it in Sao Paulo, where we had nearly 300 people from 20 different nations, and we had a 96+% approval of our definition. And our definition is so broad, you can drive a truck through it, right? It says, be nice to the environment, treat animals good. I mean, it's really broad, right? But it covers all those three pillars, and then you pivot it and you turn it over to Brazil, to the United States, to Canada, and you say, here are the areas we think you need to address. Now you address them in a way that makes sense for your local challenges. So 96+% people in our roundtable adopted that. The Australians didn't like it because, you know, Australians are persnickety people. But other than the Aussies, everyone adopted it, right? Even all the NGOs. This is very powerful. They bought into this concept that maybe we don't need to create some global standard and control everybody. Maybe we need to create a global baseline and empower everybody, right? It's a different concept. So here's our global definition for dummies: planet, people, animals, and progress. This is a demonstration of the roundtable negotiation process, because I myself, being a humanist, I think it's all about people, all right? And I said it should be people, planet, animals, and progress. And the NGO said, oh, no, Cameron, it's all about the planet. And I said, really, why do you care about the planet so much? Is it because it might have people on it? Are you trying to save the moon? He said, no, it's all about the planet. So, fine, part of the negotiation. So we define sustainable beef as socially responsible, environmentally sound, and economically viable product that prioritizes these four areas, and it goes all across the value chain. This is not a farmer KPI program, right? Retailers have a responsibility. Packers have a responsibility. Drug dealers like Zoetis and Elanco have a responsibility. Consumers have a responsibility. It's about shared responsibility, because the challenge of feeding the world and not destroying the planet in the process is the great challenge of our time, and we all share it, okay? It's not just a farmer problem. Everyone has a role to play. We have 5 principles: natural resources, people in the community, animal health and welfare, food, and efficiency and innovation. And yes, I pushed hard to get efficiency and innovation into our definition. And I understand some consumers may not like that. I don't care. In order to meet the challenge of feeding the world, we're going to have to be more efficient. We're going to have to use technology and innovation. How we market to consumers, that's another question. But the reality when we're having a sustainability discussion is you can't remove technology. Okay? And then underneath each of these broad principles, there's criteria that give further direction. But we don't go to this indicator level stage where we're going to go and audit individual farms. And here's why. We have a broad global definition. And then we have regional roundtables. There's a U.S. roundtable for sustainable beef, a Canadian roundtable for sustainable beef, a Brazilian roundtable for sustainable beef. Why? So Brazilians can determine the future of Brazilians. Canadians can determine the future of Canadians. Americans can determine the future of Americans. And we'll build other regional roundtables so that local actors have control of their destiny and their future, and they feel empowered by the process, rather than someone showing up with an audit checklist and says, thou shalt do this in order to be deemed sustainable by the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. This is not the approach we want to take. We want this to be an empowerment exercise. Now we've hired some consultants who are helping us translate what these regional actors are doing and how that aligns with what we would like to see as a global roundtable. And then how do we communicate this great progress, the great things that the Americans, the Canadians, the Brazilians, the Australians, the Uruguayans are all doing. So helping to share those messages, share those values with the world. The U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef just started last month. You think there's interest in this issue? 65 founding members. The Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef has 5 founding members. I'm one of them, and I was kicking and screaming through the whole founding, right? You launch this in the U.S., you've got 65 members. And a lot of them are cattle producers or state cattle associations, right? All across the value chain, people who like this approach of, this is pretty exciting, I can help define the future of the U.S. beef industry through sustainability without having someone dictate the terms to me. It's a powerful concept. So again, stay focused on these little kids. Stay focused on continuous improvement. Remember people. Responsibly meeting the needs of the present while improving the ability of future generations to responsibly meet their own needs. This is sustainability. All the marketing BS aside, this is sustainability. This is the challenge. Okay? Hipsters, I love them. And these wonderful people could be our customers. Okay? And hopefully they are our customers, but they're not our sole customers. Okay? I'm brown, in case you haven't noticed. I like putting Africans on the screen. These people like to eat too, right? Both groups deserve sustainable choices more than sustainable marketing. Okay? This is an important concept. So I always ask my roundtable presidents, are the decisions you're making within your regional roundtable creating the proliferation of another sustainable niche? Or is it really helping us meet the challenge of feeding the world, improving beef systems all across the globe? Because that's what we should be focused on. Not seals, not marketing. Be focused on meeting the actual challenge. Go back to our definition. People, I put people first. Planet, animals, and progress. And sustainability is a journey. Once that little yellow boy reaches that door, he's going to find a whole nother set of inclining steps. This is sustainability. It's a journey, continuous improvement.